Hey people, Linker here today with something special alongside this format, a predictive benchmark tier list update. We'll talk about everything here, but if you're only here to check out the ranks, I hope you enjoy this. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe on your way out, and thank you very much. But if you stay, I promise you two things. I promise you first, the most up-to-date endgame data commentary on this topic, and second, I promise you a little bit of a surprise in the end. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so a little bit of background about what this is. What does it mean to have a benchmarked predictive endgame campaign tier list? What I'm talking about is this. First, this is predictive. This is because I want to release a tier list for the first time that will survive for more than 2 months. Because usually, even when you work as much as I do to make the tier list as accurate as possible, it's still a little bit problematic. They overage very quick and people tell me, Linker, I invested in this hero that you said is very good. 2 months later, you publish a tier list saying they're not as good. What happened? So in this one, I put extra effort in to predict what's the situation gonna be like. I'm predicting what carries will survive, what supports will be better, and I'll talk about this more in the placement section. As for the benchmark, some of you know this is rankings for the heroes. So the numbers are how good the heroes are. The reason I'm doing this is twofold. First, so that you have a point of reference for how good is a hero, how much you're losing or gaining from a specific pick, and second, so that you're able to compare heroes together. So for example, let's say you don't know, maybe I should get Torn and Naka, or on the other hand, I can invest in my Numisu. Which one's going to be better for me in the end of resources? This is especially useful when you talk about stuff like 4-faction versus stargazing. This is useful for all of you guide makers. I know the community needs more accurate guides, so I'm going to make one as the staple. And you know, I set the standard for tier list in the community, but this one is going to be a little different. We're going to talk about the new campaign meta. So times 7.5 deficit is what you can expect if you're the end game chapters 36, 37, and onwards, obviously talking until the very end, chapter 41 and so forth. I'm assuming all the heroes are maxed. This has some impact. Heroes like Cassus, for example, can be much better if they didn't have heroes like Lucretia. And in terms of the tier, so we divided them a little bit differently than we used to. We have the SS tier. These are going to be the 3 most broken heroes in the game. If you've been playing the end game, you know these heroes, you know why they're so strong. This is going to be the S tier, A tier, B tier, so these are going to be the heroes that are in the middle. C tier is going to be the bottom 25 heroes opposite to the A, that's the top 25, and F tier is going to be the bottom tier opposed to S and SS, that's going to be the top 10. So let's just start talking about the heroes that changed, the new heroes introduced, and what do we know that changed since the last tier list. Starting off, we have Belinda. Now, Belinda is one of those characters that in a predictive tier list could do relatively well. And the reason for that is that she does have something unique. She has the crit buff in her blessing. However, she still went down a little bit. So we see Belinda, usually she supported characters like Khazard and Ainz. And Khazard is not being used for the crit. That's not what Khazard does. Khazard obviously does the CC, stuff like that. And secondly, she used to support Ainz, but Ainz is currently seeing tighter and tighter sets. Ainz goes together with Albedo almost exclusively. I'll talk about that more in a second. So Belinda, a character that would usually see a small buff in this kind of a situation, is actually remaining in the lowest tier, ranked only 9, slightly above Rigby. Secondly, and this is another one of these characters that will probably be doing good in Tower, but when you talk about campaign, and I did take into account other modes slightly in heroes like Twins or Aziz, Gwyneth is in a little bit of a tough spot. What's going on with Gwyneth right now is that obviously as a carry, she used to do incredible. She used to stun lock, she used to damage, but as more heroes and carries are being introduced, carries are easier to outclass than supports. Because supports, if you have one niche that's unique to you, there's going to be the enemy that suffers from it. There's going to be the synergies and the counter synergies and everything. But if you're just a carry, if you do damage, the second they release somebody that does more damage, like an Ainz, you get pushed down. Isolde, you get pushed down. Aaron, you get pushed down. Eventually, I estimate that Gwyneth will find herself in a very sad situation. Right now, she sees little use, so she's a little bit higher than this in practice. But in this predictive tier list, we're going to put her a little lower than that because I don't think this is going to be a hero that ages well with time. Next up, Kaz. So coming at it from the complete opposite direction. Kaz is actually a hero that used to be considered to be bad But when fully invested, like her skill level, the way that you're able to use her, dodging the magic attacks through her different abilities, having that high of a dodge cap, she's actually able to carve herself quite an interesting niche. And you know what? There might come in the future heroes that actually want this. Heroes that buff dodge pass or increase dodge cap or something to that effect. Kaz is going to be on the forefront whenever that happens. So Kaz is one of those heroes that's discovering more use. And in a predictive tier list, we'll probably keep discovering more and more and more. So, actually finds herself on the B tier for the first time, I think, since she was ever introduced, even way back in the day. And from the other direction, falling down, we have Wukong. Now, Wukong, he's a tank. Like, the core thing that Wukong does is that he tanks, but the main thing, like his main claim to fame, except for being a celestial and cool and a part of Chinese mythology and everything, accuracy reduction, haste reduction, all of these do not carve big enough a niche. Now, I'm not saying Monkey bad, Monkey good, okay? He's in the middle of B tier. That's a pretty good slot to be in, middle low end, still pretty good to be in. For Celestial, not as much. But in a predictive tier list, not big enough of a niche for me to tell you, go ahead and invest into Wukong, right? Like in a couple months, you could see another hero that's similar to Wukong enough to just completely outclass him, and he is finding issues fighting those tanks that are just rising in use. Whether it's Anna that got introduced, gave him a very hard time, basically outclassed him in most all departments, Brutus that is being rediscovered and more. So carrying forward, Wukong is going to be at a 44 at the bottom of the B tier. Next up, Namora. Namora, another one of those heroes that's getting discovered. Namora specifically finds herself in the precious A tier. A tier is not a slot that any hero gets, but Namora's 9 out of 9, the ability to charm a hero, is something that when you talk about the higher campaign cap, since the campaign changes, now basically campaign min power is almost infinity, right? Being able to disable one hero with a charm and possibly another if you time it correctly, sometimes there's some shenanigans that make you be able to do even more, is just completely insane. As you know, some of you saw my highlighted replays, Namora can do quite a lot, even in a magnificent deficit. So Namora is actually finding usage in those later stages. We have chapter 40, 39 replays, and we know that Namora is one of those heroes that's rising up very, very prominently just for her furniture and what she can bring to the table, not in terms of healing, but just the charms themselves are strong enough to buy the extra seconds that you need for carries and traditional carries to work in these rougher settings when you cut forward after the campaign has been nerfed like it has. Next up, I'm going to talk about Albedo and Ainz. And in the past, this will make sense to everybody. There would be no need to justify any of these placements. But right now, the gap between Ainz and Albedo does not make a lot of sense to some people. And they're telling me, yo, Linker, look, like, you're making a predictive tier list, right? Like, Ainz is rarely ever used outside of Albedo, since now he has much rougher competition in terms of carries, and we're going to talk about those that bring forward that competition in just a second. But if he's having such a hard time, if he's used almost exclusively with Albedo, and if Albedo can be used in outside sets in the future, how do you rank them so differently? How is Ainz almost twice the ranking of Albedo, even slightly more than that? And the answer to that is that Ainz is still the carry in that setting. Ainz is the one that you want to invest in. Ainz is still extremely prominent, and Ainz in the carry meta can still be used outside of Albedo, and Ainz also has a very unique ability. Ainz furniture stuns and does HP % damage. You can see past or future dimensional support just kind of clicking in and making Ainz do more than he currently does, and in the carry meta, he's still one of the top 5 carries. And if you're holding this tougher carry slot to hold in a predictive tier list, and if you're doing well at it, and if you do have that potential, I would not put Ainz down, because it's just incorrect to say you shouldn't invest in Ainz. He's one of the top 5 carries, and he's very good at that. He might be at the bottom of that, like 4th to 5th, depends on how you look at it, depends on the setting, but Ainz still a very, very strong carry, and Albedo obviously waiting for extra dimensionals to maybe shine or even outshine her partner. If they don't go together, by the way, Joker also got like really, really strong. I didn't talk about this too much, but if you know what you're doing, Joker is something you really want to look out for. Next up, Kren. So we did talk about Kren. I did predict he's going to be good. People flamed me for it. And would you look at that, even the haters can deny Kren is really, really good. Kren goes in Rowan sets. Kren just blasts away and does control like nothing else. When you have a full invested, which is the one thing we were missing in the start, right? He needs investment. He needs to be doing the bombs and the subsequent subsequential stuns to really come forward. He needs to do this chain CC is what I'm trying to say. Really strong, really strong, can carry sets, and he's really good at what he does. So Kren finds a very comfortable slot, the strongest mauler right now, able to bring forward to the table not just CC, not just damage, but a lot of utility and synergy with other things that are going very well. He's one of the best Rowan synergies in the meta if you're not using him in somewhere else, but he's able to make sets that would otherwise not work, and he's able to get rid of extremely threatening campaign settings, especially when you're talking about enemy signature items. CC, like Kren has, is something that's really strong and you really want to have on your team if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you can't pass a specific stage. Alright, we want to talk about something that is very close to my heart. Mehira did a hero analysis. Go check it out, go watch it, come back here after that. But Mehira is incredible in these min power settings. So she's not as good as Thorin as that makes me to say. Watch the Swan Dance video if you'd like, but very strong nonetheless, able to charm enemies, lock them down, able to CC very widely, and able to scale off of the enemies. And this is something as high as the higher the campaign scaling goes, the better this ability is gonna be. So Mehira really shining in these new min power settings after campaign was nerfed and min power was reduced. So we do have the people that are gonna macro all the way, but for you endgame players that are trying to find something that you can cut through, right? Something that can maybe CC right, something that will enable your carries that can't do enough damage otherwise. Ain's Mehira sets I've talked about in the context of PvP, less relevant here, but even Kren, a lot of sets are enjoying Mehira. And the star of the night that goes all the way up to the S tier is Grezel. In the past was way lower than this, but is seeing a massive move up. The thing with the Grezel is, first of all, Demonic Assault, second, his control, third, the damage. Since he was changed, it was just an overtime thing, where it was just completely rediscovered. He does not take Alna, which is why he's so high. He does not have to use Alna, and being able to carry a set without relying on a hero like Alna or Rowan is just incredible. He can do well with traditional Graveborn support, stuff that you see over here, like Silas, like Farah, leaving Alna, for example, for another set, maybe Lucretia, maybe you do Lucretia in 5-pull. You know, it gives you a lot more flexibility. He's able to bring very strong abilities forward to the table, and he does have enemy-oriented scaling. So there's a lot of things that makes a hero very good. If you invest in him, it goes up. Because this is a predictive tier list, I moved him even slightly upper than that, because I do predict stuff like this Zyra that we're gonna discover, and I'll talk about in just a second, is going to bring more to the table to heroes like Grezel. Alright, and next, we need to talk about these 5 new introductions since the last tier list. It's been quite a while. Peggy, as we said, as we predicted, clunky, not easy to make work, but does what she does. I mean, she does have the knights that can pull aggro, so there's some potential over there. Obviously not too much, obviously nothing to invest in, but you do want to keep a watch for Peggy. I mean, take it with a grain of salt. Moral, an underwhelming Celis hypo, but still has a high skill ceiling. We do want to see her with stuff like Grezel sometimes, for example, is able to do the pull, has the little orb, all of you know it. We did overview it briefly on the community tab. Definitely check that out to keep up to date with the endgame meta, but interesting hero, not obvious to use, has her clunkiness, but has her abilities. Celis hypo, so they couldn't make her too bad. Chromos. If you're watching this, I appreciate you, man. Next up, the Zyra. So, we talked about the Zyra, I didn't even talk about it in the updated video. This is going to be pretty much in line with that. She's a worth Silas. She has the CC and the crowd control immunity. I did test her myself. I did talk with other players while making this that had extreme intensive tested with her. Shout out to AMB, Artie, everybody that helped. We had a phone call with like over 40 people at some point, so that's nice. And next up we have Prince of Persia, like Ezio, but a little bit less trivial to use. Usually they can go together in some sets. Ezio does go with Rack, which we will talk about in just a second. Strong, pretty strong in the top 25, but does not find the same kind of utility that Ezio can with the executions. People that can execute, like carries that can really land, or side carry for common picks, is going to be a theme for good heroes. So this is why Ezio is so far away from Prince, while Prince has a lot of similar attributes to Ezio. And next up, the hero of the recent introductions, the guy that's enabling everything behind the scenes, the one that we predicted will find top use because of his signature item, and the one that you do want to invest in if you're up to date on the end game. The new carry is gonna be Raku. Just too good. The plus 30 signature item does percent damage, you know it all. Incredible work. Does not burst, go slow, just like we predicted. Finds use in campaign. I'm still waiting for him to be fully discovered in PvP like some of these picks. Nonetheless, good campaign tier list. The update was warranted and necessary, and I hope this will help you. First of all, for you out there just trying to figure out your picks, what you want to focus on. Second of all, for you guide makers that need this data to make the right decisions and like go forward with your guides. For now, thank you everybody for the support you've given me. I'm trying to find time to kind of do this. In real life, it's a little bit complicated where I'm at. Some of you know, some of you know less, some of you know why Elware is basically as a seller with a male sign. But for today, I hope this has been useful for you, and I've been Linker. Peace.